Alright, I'm back with another video. This time I'm highlighting another entry that I like from our jam. It's called Stop. It's by Daichi Fob. It is a platformer where you can stop time in order to solve puzzles. Now, what's interesting about this entry is that he actually created a devlog on how he came up with this idea, or rather the process that led him to this idea and how he created this game. He has a WebGL build, so you can play it in the browser, and if you want to find his devlog, just hit the YouTube link in his description. But basically, to summarize, he was actually working on a different game before this one. So in most jams, we come up with our idea that we're going to be building in the first few hours if it's like a weekend jam, or in this case, probably the first week since it's a 30-day jam. But what he actually did was he came up with an idea, he started developing it, and then halfway through decided that he wasn't as into it. And so he abandoned that idea, read some time travel stories, played some games from other indie developers that he just randomly, I guess, researched and then liked what they had to say. And then he got inspired and then decided to come up with this very simple but very elegantly executed game. It's just a simple platformer where basically the only added mechanic is that you can stop time, but that actually changes a lot because he added, well, you can ride platforms or jump on platforms that you previously couldn't just because time has been stopped, and other things that he added you can shoot a gun, or you get a gun later on, you can shoot like a giant bullet, and then you can stop time, jump on your bullet, ride the bullet for a little bit, stop time, jump, hit some switch, jump back on your bullet, and resume time again. I mean, it's pretty cool how far he's taken this mechanic and what he's done with the level design here. So like all entries, I'm going to be playing this from the source, just so I can talk about the source a little bit later. Now, when building from source, always go to build settings, find the first level, start from there. Now in this case, this first level is actually a splash screen. And so if you were to actually try to piece together how this game was put together afterward, you probably don't care that much about the splash screen. You may just want to look at the scene manager and probably just the session manager script and see exactly how much is actually going to persist from one level to the other. But most of the actual setup is going to be in the first playable level. This is where we're going to find the player, the goal, the canvas, the stuff that actually matters for the gameplay. The other thing to note is that when you run this, or when you open this in Unity for the first time, it's probably going to be set to free aspect. Now, for most games where you're publishing for a platform, which is basically any game that you're going to take beyond the prototype stage, you need to pick an aspect ratio that you're going to be building toward. So I wouldn't recommend working free aspect. If you ever get serious about the game, or you decide that beyond the prototype stage, or just I'm ready to make this into something that I want to publish, even if it is a prototype, you want to pick an aspect ratio and stick with it. In this case, it's a WebGL game that's built for a specific resolution, and so it's best to switch it to that resolution that you set. I'm actually going to start the game in free aspect just to show you what it looks like. But basically, because the UI is not designed to scale according to free aspect, which is just whatever is on my local computer, you are going to have to switch it to the resolution that he intends for you to play the game on. Now, this player controller here, what's interesting about this is that he didn't actually make this player controller. So, as I mentioned earlier, he published an early build of this game on social media, and people from around the world that saw it tried his game, and then just decided that, some things about it they didn't like, some things that they did, they gave him feedback, and then one of the guys that gave him feedback said, your player controller sucks. And the guy said, I've built a game that's a platformer, 2D, and I've got a much better player controller, and he basically just handed it to this guy. And so Daichi Fob switched out his player controller for the one that was given to him by someone else. It's tried and tested, and as you can tell, it looks smooth, it plays smooth, it's got lerping, tweening, animations, this little particle effect thing. And so if there's one thing I would take away from this source as a developer, any indie developer, is that the player controller in this project rocks. Definitely something that you can look at and try to build your own player controller off of, or maybe use it as inspiration if you're building some sort of 2D platformer game. Now, in terms of level design, it's great in that he incrementally teaches you how to play the game. So here's just a basic, you have to use jumping and moving left and right to get to the goal. And then here's just another one, kind of like a reinforcement learning. And then here's the first one. We actually have to use the space to stop time, and of course it tells you right there. And then you can just, Now this one is a little bit tougher because I have to time exactly when I want these blocks to stop. Um, but yeah, I'm not gonna play through the whole thing. At some point, you get a gun that can shoot a large bullet, and it's large enough for you to ride. And that's, I think, what's cool later on is that there are these puzzles where you have to like make a block fall, and then you stop time, and then you shoot your gun, and then stop time again, and then maybe make the block and the bullet travel a little bit, and then you jump on the block, and then you ride the block for a little bit, and then you unpause time, or you pause time again, and you jump on your bullet. It can get pretty complex, but using only these simple mechanics, he's done a lot with it, and I think that's what's the beauty of this sort of design. It's very elegant, it's very simple, and it's definitely the idea of taking one mechanic as far as you can go. Well, maybe not as far as you can go, but for the I want to say 14 days that he worked on this, it's actually really impressive what he's made. I'm sure if he had the full 4 weeks to work on this, he could have really taken this mechanic all the way. Um, but there's definitely room for expansion after this jam if you want to continue working on it. So let's dive into the source. So as I mentioned previously, the first level is just a splash screen. You can get this just by playing the game. Once you actually jump in here, though, to level 1, and you look in the scripts, it's a typical jam game architecture where most things are initialized in the start method. Um, so, like the player's got all these things to start, and then it runs on the update loop. And so if you're trying to piece together something, the best way to do this is by using find usages. So if you want to figure out how, let's say, I don't want to say running, but like how ladder climbing works, you can hit find usages, and it looks like only in this case it's called an update within the player.cs script, but you can see basically how it's implemented here. The other thing to note is that there are some redundant scripts in here, which might make it a little bit confusing to navigate. I don't know if this actually exists in Visual Studio. I would assume it does, but when you click on a script, it'll tell you whether there are usages. So here, this player movement script, I assume this is his old one because it's not used anywhere in the project, and Rider can detect this. I don't know if Visual Studio can, but in case Visual Studio can't, the player movement script is not used anywhere. It's the entire player movement is just this player.cs script. There's also player movement too that might throw you off because there is one asset usage, and that's in a player body prefab. But if you go and look at that player body prefab, it's actually not being used. So it even has like, I guess he just like deleted scripts from it too. There's really just what you see in the scene here. So if it doesn't exist, like actually in the level 1 scene, then we should be able to safely assume that it isn't being used. Double check the asset usage here. And if you want to really study this source, I would recommend cleaning up a little bit, using the asset usage, and then actually checking if it's in the hierarchy to delete the scripts that aren't being used. But again, the real gold mine of this source code is definitely this player controller that's been tuned and tweaked, and it's pretty self-explanatory. The only thing I will say I don't like is the excessive use of find object of type. Now again, this is a jam game, so what we do in jams is just write code for speed and iteration, as opposed to making it look clean or easily, I guess, readable. We're not really writing for the public, but I would actually prefer not to use find object of type even in start, because when you use something like this, find object of type can create runtime errors, because in an ideal situation, if you were to delete an important script, you actually want to see errors during compile time. That way you know, okay, I deleted this script, there were other dependencies on it, and then I need to go fix those dependencies. When you use find object of type, you don't get these compile errors. You just run the game, and then you just error out during runtime. And the ideal situation is that you want to find as many errors as you can during compile time and not runtime, because it's possible for you to miss certain errors during runtime, or rather, maybe you get to a situation where a runtime error can only occur if certain things are true, and you don't ever test for whatever reason. You never get a test scenario where those situations or that situation ever happens. And so I would recommend, if you were to move forward, if you were to really try to like clean this up. Definitely get rid of these find object of types. It's much better to just drag them into the inspector here and then just have them error out if something gets deleted, just so you know what you need to fix after you remove a script. But yeah, that pretty much covers the source here. It's actually quite self-explanatory. And again, I almost want to take this player controller myself and kind of dissect it a little bit because it is very nice. So definitely a gem in the source code here. Definitely recommend everyone else to try this game, to watch his devlog, and to really just give it a rating and just really look at the source and see what you can learn from this because it is truly a gem.